one of the first events we did at Nesta was with a guy called Ron Burt, who I quoted in my talk, but also a woman called Meg Pickard, who's now at The Guardian. And she made a really interesting observation. I can't quote her directly, but it was offline, it's the context that binds us. So the fact, that I'm white, middle-class British person, I try not to be, but I'm drawn to other people like me. That's the way we all are to a greater or lesser extent. But online, it's the content that binds us. It's the fact that we love, I don't know, Miles Davis, or we love a particular open source kind of community or whatever. And so the social object, the thing that connects the community, is different on and offline. And I just thought that was, I thought it was true when I heard it then, and that's just been reinforced for me again and again. And so I think that's fascinating. I mean, it's a topic I feel quite passionate about. My father's American, my mother's German, and even though I was born in Scotland and grew up in England, I feel an affinity to a number of countries, shall we say, and my story is increasingly the way people move much more than they used to, and I think that's interesting. And even though but Nesta was focused on the UK, so most of my projects, even though I was working with multinational companies like US companies like Procter & Gamble or French companies like Orange, my work was primarily in the UK. So I had some insight into the international component. Increasingly now, as 100% Open, we're doing more international work and travelling more. So I'm in Spain next week, and I've been spending more time in France with Orange, and I think even though there's lots of things about British culture that annoy me, I think because English is the global language, and because London is the most international city in the world, and because of the links with Europe and America and China and India, I think, just coming to the UK for a second, I think there's an interesting opportunity for the UK to be a bit of a node in a sort of global open innovation network. I don't know how we make that happen, and there are other nodes as well, so I'm not just saying it's all about the UK, but I think and I think generally as a culture, British people can be, they're not always, but can be quite open, and I don't know where to go with that, but I think the companies I work with are all multinational companies, so they're all trying to figure this out themselves. And there's a fascinating piece of research that you might know by Gert Hofstetter, who did analysis. He worked for IBM. He was a sort of psychologist, I think, or sociologist, who was looking at people's values, I guess. Both aligned to the company within IBM and what it believed. This is kind of in the 60s and 70s, so it's a bit old now, but also to their country and the norms within their country. And at the time, I think it was certainly true that people were more connected to their country of origin than their workplace, but they still felt, to be an IBM employee, certainly in the 70s, there was a culture, there was a mindset, there was a set of values that went with that. And I think I think our value sets are becoming a bit more fragmented, and that's and our communities are becoming a bit more global. Fragmented is a sort of negative word, isn't it? But I think we need to get better at this, and that's, I think, what the early part of the 21st century is kind of all about. It's coming to terms with globalization and not getting too hung up with countries. I actually think. So I've not quite articulated this, or not quite thought it through yet. But I think we're still hung up on countries, and I think stuff happens at kind of a city level, human scale, walking distance level. People like Joanne Jacobs and people talk about some of this stuff, or at a kind of global level. So at a very local level, a very global level. And I think the concept of countries, though still clearly important, I think is decreasing in importance. And I think. I'm kind of fascinated by this. I don't have any answers.